The smell of fresh bread hit Benedict Rourke like a fist to the gut, reminding him of things he had spent 3 years trying to forget. Columbus, New Mexico, was a dusty speck on the map in 1887, a place where the desert met ambition and usually won. The town consisted of a main street lined with wooden buildings that looked like they might blow away in the next sandstorm, a saloon that never closed, a general store that sold everything from nails to laudanum, and a small bakery that had opened 6 months ago. Benedict had watched the bakery's construction from a distance, curious but uninvolved, the way he watched most things in town. He came in once a month for supplies, spoke to no one unless necessary, and returned to his ranch 15 miles north where he raised cattle and nursed his solitude like a favored drink. But today the wind had shifted, carrying that scent across the street as he tied his horse to the post outside the general store, and something in his chest tightened with a pain he thought had finally dulled. Bread baking. The yeasty warmth of it, the promise of home and comfort and all the things that had died with Margaret and the baby 3 winters past. He stood there longer than he meant to, one hand still on the reins, breathing in that smell until his hired hand, Paulo, touched his shoulder. "Mr. Rourke." "You well?" Benedict cleared his throat and nodded. "Fine. Get the supplies loaded. I will be back shortly." He did not plan to walk toward the bakery. His boots simply carried him there, across the rutted street, past the saloon where men were already drinking though it was barely noon, past the barber shop with its faded pole. The bakery was small, painted white, with a wooden sign that read Nolan's Bread in careful letters. Through the window he could see her, the woman everyone called the widow, though Benedict did not know her story. He had heard snippets, the way one does in small towns even when trying not to listen. Her husband had died, left her with a child. She had moved here from Santa Fe to start over. She baked bread every morning and sold it to whoever had the coins. Good bread, people said. The best they had ever tasted. She was younger than he expected, perhaps 25, with dark hair pinned back from her face and flour dusting her apron. She moved with efficiency, pulling loaves from the oven with practiced ease, setting them on the cooling rack, turning back for more. There was a grace to her movements, but also a weariness, the kind that came from carrying weight no one else could see. Benedict pushed open the door. A bell chimed above his head, cheerful and incongruous. She looked up, and for a moment their eyes met. Hers were gray, he noticed, like storm clouds over the desert, pretty but guarded. "Good afternoon," she said. Her voice was low, pleasant. "What can I get for you?" He gestured to the loaves cooling on the rack. "Bread. I have wheat, rye, and sourdough. The sourdough is freshest." "Sourdough, then." She wrapped it in brown paper with quick, neat movements. 15 cents. He handed her a quarter. "Keep the change." "That is not necessary." "For good bread it is." She hesitated, then nodded, slipping the coin into her apron pocket. "Thank you, Mr. Rourke. Benedict Rourke." "Mr. Rourke." She handed him the wrapped loaf. "I am Katherine Nolan." "I know," he said, then felt foolish for admitting he had heard talk about her. "That is, I have heard folks mention your bakery. They say you make the best bread in 3 counties. A small smile touched her lips, the first real expression he had seen on her face. "They are kind." "Or hungry enough not to be particular." "I doubt that." He stood there, the bread warm in his hands, searching for something else to say and coming up empty. Finally, he just nodded. "Good day, Mrs. Nolan." "Good day." He walked out into the bright sunlight, feeling oddly shaken, like he had just done something momentous instead of simply buying bread. Paulo had the wagon loaded and was waiting, looking at him with curious eyes. "You buy bread, boss." "Seems so. We got bread back at the ranch." "Not like this." Paulo did not argue, just climbed up onto the wagon seat and took the reins. They rode out of town in silence, the bread resting on Benedict's lap, still warm through the paper. That night, sitting alone in his kitchen with an oil lamp throwing shadows on the rough wooden walls, Benedict unwrapped the loaf and cut a thick slice. The crust crackled under his knife. The inside was soft, full of air pockets, perfect. He buttered it and took a bite. It tasted like memory. Like the bread Margaret used to make when they were first married, when everything was new and full of promise. Before the hard winter, before the fever, before the tiny grave next to hers on the hill behind the barn. He sat there and ate 3 slices, and when he was done, he wrapped the rest carefully and put it in the bread box. He would make it last, ration it out over the week. But the next afternoon, riding past Columbus on his way to check the northern fence line, he found himself stopping in town. Just for a few minutes, just to buy another loaf. Katherine was serving old Mrs. Henderson when he came in, patient as the woman counted out pennies with arthritic fingers. Benedict waited by the door, hat in hands, watching. There was a child in the back room. He could hear her singing, a light, sweet voice practicing scales. "There you are, Mrs. Henderson," Katherine said gently. "Give my best to your husband." "I will, dear. Such good bread. It helps his digestion." When the old woman had left, Katherine turned to Benedict. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Mr. Rourke, back so soon. Did you not like the sourdough? Liked it fine. Wanted another loaf." "I see." She reached for the bread, then paused. "Are you feeding a large household? Just myself and 3 hired men. That is a lot of bread." He shifted his weight, feeling caught out. They enjoyed it. She wrapped a fresh loaf, her hands quick and sure. 15 cents. He paid exact this time, took the bread, and left before he could embarrass himself further. The pattern established itself without his quite meaning for it to happen. Every day, Benedict found a reason to ride into Columbus. A fence needed wire from the general store. A horse needed shoeing. The bank had papers for him to sign. And while he was there, while he was in town anyway, he stopped at the bakery and bought a loaf of bread. Katherine greeted him with increasing familiarity. "Good afternoon, Mr. Rourke." Then, after a week, the usual. He nodded and she had it ready, wrapped and waiting. Sometimes he saw the child, a girl of perhaps 6 with her mother's dark hair and serious eyes. She would peek out from the back room, curious, then disappear when he looked her way. "Your daughter?" he asked one day. "Yes, Lily." "Pretty name." "Thank you." The conversations never went much deeper than that. Katherine was polite but distant, and Benedict did not push. He told himself he just liked the bread, that it was worth the daily ride, that there was nothing more to it than that. Paulo disagreed. "You going to town again, boss? Need to check on that feed order. You checked yesterday. They might have news." Paulo grinned. "Uh-huh, or maybe you like the baker lady." Benedict shot him a look that would have withered a lesser man. "Get back to work." But Paulo was not wrong, and Benedict knew it. He found himself thinking about Katherine at odd moments. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. The small smile she gave when he complimented the bread. The tiredness in her eyes that never quite went away. He wanted to ask about her husband, about how she had ended up here, about whether she was managing all right. But those questions felt too personal, too presumptuous. So he kept buying bread and keeping his thoughts to himself. 3 weeks into his daily visits, everything changed. Benedict was in the general store, actually buying feed this time, when he heard shouting from down the street. He stepped outside to see a man stumbling out of the bakery, Katherine following, her face flushed with anger. "You get out and stay out, Frank Dalton," she yelled. The man turned, swaying slightly. He was drunk, Benedict realized, drunk at 2 in the afternoon. You owe me, Katherine. Your husband owed me, and now you owe me. I owe you nothing. Thomas paid his debts before he died. Like hell he did. $500, and I mean to collect. You are a liar and a cheat, and if you come near my bakery again, I will call the sheriff. Frank laughed, ugly and mean. Sheriff does not care about debts, but I do. You got till the end of the month, widow, then I take what is owed. He spat in the dust and staggered toward the saloon. Katherine stood in the street, shaking, her hands clenched into fists. The few townspeople who had witnessed the scene went about their business with studied indifference, the way people do when they do not want to get involved. Benedict crossed the street. Mrs. Nolan. She whirled on him, eyes bright with unshed tears. What? Are you all right? Do I look all right? She took a breath, seemed to gather herself. I apologize, that was rude. Yes, I am fine. Just dealing with a nuisance. That man said your husband owed him money. My husband owed half of New Mexico money, apparently. The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. Every week someone new shows up claiming Thomas borrowed from them. Most are lying, trying to take advantage of a widow. Frank Dalton is the worst of them. $500 is a lot of money, which is how I know he is lying. Thomas never had $500 in his life to borrow. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking small and vulnerable. I should get back inside. Lily is alone. If you need help. I do not need help, Mr. Rourke. I need people to leave me alone so I can work and take care of my daughter. She turned and walked back into the bakery, the door closing firmly behind her. Benedict stood in the street, frustrated and worried. He did not like Frank Dalton, had heard the man was a gambler and a bully who had been run out of 2 towns already. If he was harassing Katherine, it would not stop with words. That night, Benedict lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He kept seeing Katherine's face, the fear beneath the anger. He thought about Margaret, about how he had failed to protect her from the fever. Maybe he could not save everyone, but he could help Katherine if she would let him. The next day he went to town earlier than usual. The bakery was just opening, the smell of fresh bread wafting into the street. Katherine looked surprised to see him. You are early. Wanted to talk to you about yesterday. Her expression closed off. There is nothing to talk about. Frank Dalton is not going to leave you alone. I can handle Frank Dalton. Can you? What happens when he comes back drunk and angry? What if Lily is there? That hit home. He saw the fear flash in her eyes before she masked it. What do you suggest? She asked quietly. Let me help. I can talk to the sheriff, make sure he knows what is happening. I can ask around, find out if anyone else has had trouble with Dalton. Maybe we can prove he is lying about the debt. Why would you do that? You do not even know me. Benedict met her eyes. Because it is the right thing to do. And because no one should have to face a man like that alone. She studied him for a long moment, and he had the feeling she was seeing past his words to something deeper. Finally, she nodded. All right, but I cannot pay you. I am not asking for payment. Then what are you asking for? He had not thought that far ahead. Nothing, just let me help. She looked skeptical but did not argue. The sheriff is usually at his office in the mornings. I will go see him now. The sheriff, a heavy man named Garrett with a tobacco-stained mustache, listened to Benedict's story with half-hearted interest. Frank Dalton has not broken any laws, he said when Benedict finished. Man has a right to collect debts owed to him. The debt is not legitimate. You know that for a fact. Mrs. Nolan says her husband paid his debts. Garrett shrugged. She would say that, would she not? Look, Rourke, I understand you are trying to help, but this is a civil matter. If Dalton breaks the law, I will arrest him. Until then, my hands are tied. Benedict left the sheriff's office angry and unsatisfied. He spent the rest of the morning asking questions around town, trying to find out more about Frank Dalton and Thomas Nolan. What he learned was not encouraging. Thomas Nolan had been a dreamer, people said. Always had some scheme to get rich, always borrowing money to fund his next big idea. He had died 2 years ago when a horse threw him, leaving Katherine with a mountain of debt and a young daughter to raise. She had sold everything they owned, paid off what she could prove she owed, and moved to Columbus to start fresh with the bakery. As for Frank Dalton, he was exactly what Benedict thought, a professional gambler who made his living separating fools from their money. If he claimed Thomas Nolan owed him $500, it was likely from a card game, and likely Thomas had been cheated. But proving it was another matter. Benedict returned to the bakery late in the afternoon. Katherine was cleaning up, wiping down the counter with a rag. She looked up when he entered, hope and apprehension warring in her expression. "What did you find out?" He told her everything, watching her face fall as he explained the sheriff would not help. "So I am on my own," she said when he finished. "No, I am still here." "You cannot fight my battles for me, Mr. Rourke. Maybe not, but I can stand beside you while you fight them." She put down the rag and looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "Why are you doing this? The truth, please." Benedict took off his hat, turned it in his hands. "I lost my wife 3 years ago, and my son, he was born too early, did not survive the night. I was not there when she needed me, was out on the range with the cattle. By the time I got home, it was too late." He swallowed hard. "I cannot change that. But I can make sure you have someone in your corner now." Katherine's eyes softened. "I am sorry for your loss, and I am sorry for yours." They stood there in the quiet bakery, two people who had loved and lost, finding an unexpected connection in their shared grief. "Mama." A small voice came from the back room. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "I fell asleep. Is it time for supper?" "Almost, sweetheart." Katherine held out her hand, and the girl came to her, leaning against her side. "Lily, this is Mr. Rourke. He is a friend." Lily looked up at him with solemn eyes. "You are the man who buys bread every day." "That is right." "Why do you buy so much bread?" "Because your mother makes the best bread I have ever tasted." A small smile. "She makes good cookies, too." "I bet she does." Katherine ruffled her daughter's hair. "Go wash up for supper, Lily. I will be there in a minute." When the girl had gone, Katherine turned back to Benedict. "Thank you for trying to help. I am not giving up yet. Let me think on this, see if I can come up with a solution." "What kind of solution?" "I do not know yet, but there has to be something we can do." Over the next week, Benedict became a regular fixture at the bakery. He came in the morning to buy his bread, sometimes stayed to talk, asking Katherine about her day, her plans, her daughter. She was cautious at first, unused to someone taking an interest in her life, but gradually she began to open up. She told him about growing up in Santa Fe, the daughter of a seamstress and a carpenter. About meeting Thomas when she was 18, how charming he had been, how full of big dreams. About the slow realization that his dreams would never materialize, that he was chasing rainbows while she struggled to keep food on the table. "I did love him," she said one morning, standing at the counter while Benedict sat on a stool, his bread forgotten beside him. "But love is not enough when there are bills to pay and a child to feed. By the end, I was more his mother than his wife, cleaning up his messes, apologizing to his creditors. That must have been hard. It was lonely. Being married and lonely is worse than being alone." She looked at him. "You understand that, I think." He did. Margaret had been a good woman, a kind woman, but they had married young, barely knew each other. They had built a life together, but whether they would have built love, he would never know. "Yes," he said simply. Their conversations ranged from the profound to the mundane. She told him about her struggles with the bakery, the cost of flour and yeast, the difficulty of competing with the general store's day-old bread. He told her about the ranch, the cattle, the endless work of keeping everything running. And slowly, carefully, they began to build something neither of them had expected: friendship. Benedict found himself looking forward to his daily visits with an intensity that both pleased and worried him. He had not felt this way since Margaret, this anticipation, this desire to see a particular person smile. He told himself it was just friendship, that he was helping someone in need, but his heart knew better. Katherine seemed to feel it too. She started having his bread ready before he arrived, started smiling when he walked in, started lingering to talk even when she had work to do. Lily warmed to him as well. She started coming out when he visited, showing him drawings she had made, telling him about the stray cat she was feeding in the alley. He brought her peppermint sticks from the general store, listened gravely to her stories, treated her with the same seriousness he would an adult. "You are good with her," Katherine said one day, watching him and Lily examine a beetle they had found on the floor. "She is a good child. She likes you. She has not liked many people since her father died. I like her too." It was domestic and peaceful, these moments in the bakery, and Benedict found himself wanting more of them. Wanting mornings that started with Katherine's smile, wanting evenings that ended with Lily's laughter. Wanting a family again, even though he had sworn he would never risk his heart that way. But Frank Dalton did not disappear just because Benedict wished him gone. He came back 2 weeks after the confrontation, this time sober and mean. Benedict was at the bakery, sharing coffee with Katherine while Lily was at school, when Dalton pushed through the door. "Time is almost up, widow," he said without preamble. "End of the month you pay what is owed, or I take this bakery." Katherine stood, her face pale but resolute. "You cannot take my bakery. It does not belong to you. It will when you cannot pay. I got papers, all legal." "Your husband signed them." "Let me see these papers," Benedict said, standing as well. Dalton looked at him with narrowed eyes. "Who are you? A friend. And I would like to see proof of this debt." "It is none of your business." "If you have legitimate papers, there is no reason not to show them." Dalton's hand moved to his belt, where Benedict could see the handle of a pistol. "I do not have to show you anything, rancher. This is between me and the widow. Actually, it is between you and me now." Benedict kept his voice level calm. He was unarmed, had not worn a gun since Margaret died, but he was bigger than Dalton and he let that size speak for him. "You want money, I will buy the debt from you. Name your price." "It is not for sale." "Everything is for sale." $500, you said. "I will give you 300 cash right now to tear up those papers and leave Mrs. Nolan alone." Dalton's eyes gleamed with greed, but then he shook his head. "This bakery is worth more than that. The building, the equipment, the location. I could sell it all for 1,000, easy." "Then this is not about the debt at all, is it? You are just trying to steal her business." "I am trying to collect what is owed." Dalton's voice rose. "And if you get in my way, rancher, you will regret it." "Get out," Katherine said, her voice shaking. "Get out of my bakery now, or I will scream until the whole town comes running." Dalton laughed. "Scream all you want. No one is going to help you." But he backed toward the door. "You got 1 week, widow. 1 week to come up with $500, or I am taking what is mine." He left, slamming the door hard enough to make the bread on the shelves jump. Katherine sank into a chair, her hands over her face. "I do not have $500. I do not have $50. The bakery barely makes enough to feed us and pay for supplies." Benedict knelt beside her chair. "I have money, let me pay him." "No." She looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. "I cannot let you do that. You have already done too much, Katherine." It was the first time he had used her given name, and it felt right on his tongue. "Please, let me help you." "Why? Why do you care so much?" "Because I am falling in love with you," he thought. "Because you have brought light back into my life. because I cannot imagine going back to my empty ranch and never seeing you again. But what he said was, because you deserve better than this. You and Lily both. She searched his face, and whatever she saw there made her start crying in earnest, hard sobs that shook her whole body. Benedict did the only thing he could think of. He put his arms around her and held her while she wept. She felt small against him, fragile, though he knew she was anything but. Her hair smelled like bread and vanilla. Her tears soaked through his shirt, and holding her felt like coming home after a long, cold journey. When the storm passed, she pulled back, wiping her eyes with her apron. I am sorry. That was unseemly. It was human. You are allowed to cry. I try not to in front of Lily. She worries. You do not have to be strong all the time. Yes, I do. There is no one else. There is me. She met his eyes, and the moment stretched between them, full of possibility and fear. Then she stood, putting distance between them. I need to think. About your offer. Take your time, but Katherine, I meant what I said. I will pay Dalton, no strings attached. You do not owe me anything. If I let you do this, I will owe you everything. No, you will owe me nothing. Friends help each other, that is all this is. She did not look convinced, but she nodded. I will think about it. Benedict left the bakery feeling restless and uncertain. He had laid his cards on the table, made his feelings clear even if he had not spoken them aloud. Now he just had to wait and see what Katherine would do. He did not have to wait long. The next morning, when he came to the bakery, Katherine was waiting for him with a fresh loaf and a determined expression. I have a counter-proposal, she said before he could speak. All right. If you pay Frank Dalton, I want to pay you back. Not all at once, I cannot do that. But a little each month from the bakery's earnings. It might take years, but I will pay every cent. Benedict wanted to argue, to tell her it was not necessary, but he could see how important this was to her. Her pride, her independence, they mattered. Agreed, he said. But no interest, Mr. Rourke. Benedict, and that is my condition. You pay me back what I give Dalton, but no interest. Otherwise I will just pay him and not tell you. A reluctant smile touched her lips. You are a stubborn man, Benedict Rourke. So I have been told. He liked the way his name sounded in her voice, soft and warm. So we have a deal, she held out her hand. We have a deal. Her hand was small in his, warm and strong. He held it a moment longer than necessary, and she did not pull away. Thank you, she said softly. I do not know how I will ever really thank you. You just did. The next day, Benedict went to find Frank Dalton. He found him in the saloon, drinking whiskey and playing cards. Dalton looked up when Benedict's shadow fell across the table. Rancher, come to lose some money. Come to settle a debt. You said Katherine Nolan owes you $500. I am here to pay it. The other men at the table exchanged glances. Dalton leaned back in his chair, studying Benedict with calculating eyes. That's so. You got that kind of money on you, I can get it. But first I want to see those papers you mentioned. The ones Thomas Nolan supposedly signed. You calling me a liar? I am saying any business deal needs documentation. You show me proof of the debt, I pay you. Simple. Dalton's jaw tightened. I do not carry those papers around with me. Then we will go wherever they are, and you will show them to me, and then I will pay you. Or, if you cannot produce them, you will leave Mrs. Nolan alone and get out of Columbus for good. The saloon had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see what would happen. Dalton stood slowly. He was not as tall as Benedict, but he was armed. His hand hovered near his pistol. You are making a mistake, rancher. Show me the papers, Dalton. And if I do not, then everyone in this town will know you are a fraud and a bully who preys on widows. Is that the reputation you want? Dalton's face flushed red. For a moment Benedict thought he might draw, and he tensed, ready to move. But then Dalton spat on the floor and pushed past him. Keep your money. And keep the widow. She is more trouble than she is worth anyway." He stormed out of the saloon, and Benedict let out a breath he had not known he was holding. The other men at the card table nodded at him with something like respect. "That took guts," one of them said. "Dalton is not a man to cross." "He is a coward," Benedict said. "Cowards always back down when someone stands up to them." He left the saloon and walked straight to the bakery. Katherine was kneading dough, her arms covered in flour to the elbows. She looked up when he entered, and he could see the question in her eyes. "It is done," he said. "Dalton is gone." He could not produce any papers because there never were any. He was trying to scare you into giving up the bakery. She set down the dough and came around the counter. "You faced him down. I just asked to see proof. He did not have any, so he left. Benedict." She stopped in front of him, looking up into his face. "He could have shot you, but he did not. You could have been killed over my problems, over my debt that was not even real. You are worth the risk." The words hung in the air between them. Katherine's eyes widened, and he saw understanding dawn in them, followed by something that might have been hope. "Benedict, I—" The door burst open and Lily ran in, her face streaked with tears. "Mama, Mama, the boys at school said you are going to lose the bakery and we will have to leave town." Katherine dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into a hug. "No, sweetheart, we are not going anywhere. Mr. Rourke helped us. We get to stay." Lily looked at Benedict over her mother's shoulder. "Really, really, your mother and the bakery are not going anywhere." The little girl pulled away from Katherine and threw her arms around Benedict's legs. "Thank you, Mr. Rourke." He patted her head awkwardly, moved by the simple trust of a child. "You are welcome, Lily." Katherine stood, her eyes shining. "Stay for supper, please. It is the least I can do." Benedict knew he should refuse, should maintain the boundaries of their friendship. But he did not want to. He wanted to sit at Katherine's table, eat her food, hear Lily's chatter. He wanted to be part of their lives, even just for one evening. "I would like that," he said. Their apartment was above the bakery, small but clean, with lace curtains on the windows and flowers in a jar on the table. Katherine cooked chicken and potatoes while Lily showed Benedict her schoolwork, and he felt something in his chest loosen, a tightness he had carried for so long he had forgotten it was there. Over supper, Lily talked nonstop, telling stories about school, about the stray cat she had named Whiskers, about the new dress she wanted for her birthday. Katherine listened with patient attention, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts. Benedict watched them together and saw the love between them, strong and pure. After the meal, Katherine sent Lily to bed and she and Benedict sat at the table with coffee, the lamplight soft around them. "Thank you," Katherine said, "for everything. I do not know what I would have done if you had not helped. You would have figured something out. You are resourceful. I am desperate. There is a difference. No, you are strong. You came to a new town, started a business, raised your daughter alone. That takes strength." She looked down at her cup. "I do not feel strong. Most days I feel like I am barely holding on." "That is what strength is, holding on when you want to let go." She met his eyes. "Is that what you have been doing since your wife died?" "Yes. For 3 years I have just been holding on. Until recently." "What changed recently?" "I met you." The confession was out before he could stop it, raw and honest. Katherine's breath caught. "Benedict, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. You have brought something back into my life that I thought was gone forever. Hope, maybe, or purpose, or just the simple pleasure of looking forward to each day." "I feel it too," she whispered. "I have tried not to, told myself it was too soon, that I should not trust my feelings. But I cannot help it. When I see you come through that door each morning, my whole day gets brighter." Benedict reached across the table and took her hand. Her fingers curled around his, holding tight. "I am not Thomas," he said. I cannot promise you riches or excitement, but I can promise you honesty and loyalty, and that I will never make you cry from my foolishness. I do not want riches or excitement. I want partnership, respect, someone who sees me as more than just a burden to carry. You could never be a burden. You are the strongest woman I know." She stood, still holding his hand, and came around the table. Benedict stood as well, and then she was in his arms, her face pressed against his chest, his chin resting on her hair. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, feeling the simple comfort of not being alone. When they finally pulled apart, Katherine looked up at him with a shy smile. "I should warn you, I am not easy to live with. I am particular about how things are done, and I work too much, and I worry constantly about Lily. I am not easy either. I am used to being alone, and I am not good with words, and I spend too much time with cattle. We sound like a terrible match, or a perfect one." She laughed, the sound bright and genuine, and Benedict felt his heart swell. He wanted to kiss her, but it seemed too soon, too presumptuous. Instead, he just smiled and touched her cheek. "I should go. It is late. Will you come back tomorrow? I will come back every day if you will have me." "I will have you." He left feeling lighter than he had in years, riding back to the ranch under a sky full of stars. Paulo took one look at his face and grinned. "The baker lady said yes. I did not ask her anything. But you are going to." Benedict did not deny it. "Maybe, when the time is right." "The time is right when you make it right, boss." Over the following weeks, Benedict and Katherine built their relationship slowly, carefully. He came to the bakery every morning, stayed for coffee and conversation. He brought Lily treats and told her stories about the ranch. He helped Katherine with repairs around the bakery, fixing a loose board here, replacing a broken window there. In return, Katherine packed him lunches to take back to the ranch, sent loaves of bread home with him, listened to his concerns about the cattle market. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms, each other's fears and hopes. One Sunday, Benedict worked up the courage to invite them to the ranch. "It is not much," he warned, "but Lily might like to see the horses." Lily's eyes went wide. "Real horses? Can I pet them?" "If you are gentle." They rode out together in Benedict's wagon, Lily bouncing between them with excitement. The ranch looked better than it had in years. Benedict had spent all week cleaning and fixing, wanting to make a good impression. Paulo and the other hands had made themselves scarce, and Benedict gave Katherine and Lily a tour. He showed them the barn with its rows of stalls, the pasture where the cattle grazed, the chicken coop he had not used since Margaret died. "You could have fresh eggs," Katherine said, looking at the empty coop. "I have not bothered, it is just me. But it would not be hard. Chickens practically take care of themselves." She was right, of course. He had let things slide since Margaret's death, doing only what was necessary to keep the ranch running. But with Katherine and Lily there, he could see the possibilities again. The flower garden Margaret had planted, now choked with weeds, the vegetable patch that could feed a family. The house itself, solid and large, built for children who had never come. They had lunch on the porch, bread and cheese and apples, watching Lily chase butterflies in the yard. It was peaceful and domestic, and Benedict could imagine it being real, being permanent. "This is a good place," Katherine said. "Lonely but good." It was not always lonely. My wife, Margaret, she loved it here, had all kinds of plans for gardens and orchards. But then she got sick, and after she died, I just could not bring myself to do any of it. I understand. After Thomas died, I could barely get out of bed in the mornings. The only thing that kept me going was Lily. She needed me, so I had to keep moving. Children give us purpose. Yes, she looked at him. Do you want more children? I know you lost your son, but in the future, do you want to try again? It was a bold question, but Benedict appreciated the directness. I do. I always wanted a large family. What about you? I would like more children. Lily asks for a brother or sister constantly. She paused. Of course, that would require a husband. It would. They looked at each other, and Benedict felt the moment build between them. This was it, the time to speak or forever hold his peace. Katherine, I know we have not been courting long, but I am not a young man anymore. I know what I want, and I want you and Lily. I want to wake up every morning and see your face. I want to help raise your daughter and maybe have more children together. I want to grow old with you. I am asking you to marry me. Katherine's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Yes. Yes, Benedict, I will marry you. He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her properly for the first time. Her lips were soft, tasting of apples and sweetness. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands coming up to cup his face. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. Lily had stopped chasing butterflies and was staring at them with wide eyes. Are you and Mama kissing? Yes, Benedict said. Is that all right with you? Lily considered this seriously. Will you be my papa? Benedict's throat tightened. If you want me to be. I want a papa. The other children have papas. Then I will be your papa. She ran to them, and Katherine scooped her up, and they stood there together, the three of them, a family in the making. They decided to marry quickly, quietly. There was no reason to wait, and neither of them wanted a big fuss. The preacher married them in his parlor on a Thursday afternoon, with Paulo and Mrs. Henderson as witnesses. Katherine wore a simple blue dress, and Benedict wore his best suit. Lily held a bouquet of wildflowers and stood between them, solemn and proud. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Benedict kissed his bride and felt complete for the first time in years. They spent their wedding night at the ranch, Lily asleep in what would be her new bedroom, Katherine in Benedict's arms in the big bed he had once shared with Margaret. He had worried it might feel wrong, replacing one wife with another, but it did not. Margaret was gone, her memory cherished but no longer painful. Katherine was here, warm and alive in his. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies, whispering promises in the dark. Afterwards, Katherine lay with her head on Benedict's chest, his arm around her shoulders. I never thought I would be this happy again, she said. After Thomas died, I thought my life was over except for raising Lily, but you gave me back my future. You gave me back mine too. They decided Katherine would keep running the bakery. Benedict hired a woman from town to help her, someone to mind the ovens when Katherine needed to be at the ranch. It was a good arrangement, allowing Katherine to keep her independence while building a life with Benedict. Lily thrived in her new home. She loved the horses and the wide open spaces, loved having a father again. Benedict taught her to ride, started showing her how to care for the animals. She was bright and curious, asking endless questions, and he found he loved answering them. Katherine bloomed as well. The worry lines around her eyes eased. She laughed more, sang while she worked. Benedict would find her in the garden she had started, dirt on her hands and a smile on her face, and his heart would swell with love. 6 months after their wedding, Katherine told him she was pregnant. They were sitting on the porch after supper, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. I was not sure how you would feel, she said, nervous. After what happened with your first child, Benedict pulled her close. I am happy, terrified but happy. I am terrified too, but we will face it together. Together, he agreed. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Katherine had some morning sickness, but nothing severe. Benedict hovered anxiously, driving her crazy with his constant questions about how she felt, until she finally had to tell him firmly that she was fine, and he needed to relax. Lily was excited about being a big sister. She helped Katherine pick out fabric for baby clothes, discussed names endlessly, put her hand on Catherine's growing belly to feel the baby kick. Benedict tried not to let his fear show, but as Catherine's time drew near, he found himself remembering Margaret, remembering the blood and the pain and the terrible silence that followed. He made Katherine promise to send for the doctor at the first sign of labor, arranged for Mrs. Henderson to come stay at the ranch, prepared for every possible problem. When Katherine went into labor on a cool October morning, Benedict thought he might lose his mind. He paced the parlor while Mrs. Henderson and the doctor attended to Katherine upstairs, hearing her cries of pain and feeling utterly helpless. Lily sat in a chair, watching him with big eyes. "Papa, is Mama going to be all right?" "Yes, sweetheart, she is going to be fine." He said it with more confidence than he felt. "You are scared." There was no point in lying. "Yes, I am scared." She climbed into his lap, something she had not done in months, needing comfort as much as he did. They sat together, listening to the sounds from upstairs, waiting. When the baby's cry finally came, thin and indignant, Benedict nearly collapsed with relief. He set Lily down and ran upstairs, bursting into the bedroom. Katherine was propped up on pillows, sweaty and exhausted but smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle, red-faced and wailing. "It is a boy," the doctor said. "A healthy boy." Benedict crossed to the bed and looked down at his son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and Katherine's nose and perfect tiny fingers that grasped at the air. "Hello, little one," Benedict whispered. "I am your papa." Katherine looked up at him with tired but joyful eyes. What should we name him? They had discussed names but never quite decided. Now, looking at his son, Benedict knew, Joseph, after my father. "Joseph Rourke," Katherine said, testing it. "I like it." Lily came in then, led by Mrs. Henderson, and climbed carefully onto the bed to meet her brother. "He is so small." "You were this small once," Katherine said. "Can I hold him?" Benedict helped Lily position her arms, then carefully placed Joseph in them. The baby stopped crying, seeming to sense he was safe. Lily looked down at him with wonder. "Hello, Joseph. I am your big sister. I am going to teach you everything." Benedict looked at his family, his wife and children, and felt a peace he had never known. This was what life was supposed to be. Not perfect, not without fear or difficulty, but full of love and hope and possibility. In the days that followed, they settled into a new rhythm. Joseph was a good baby, sleeping well, eating heartily. Katherine recovered quickly, was soon back to baking, though she took more breaks now. Benedict hired another hand at the ranch to help with the extra work, giving him more time with his family. Lily doted on her baby brother, always wanting to help with feedings and diaper changes. She sang to him, read him stories even though he was too young to understand. Benedict would find them together, Lily's dark head bent over Joseph's cradle, and his heart would fill to bursting. As the years passed, their family grew. 2 years after Joseph came another boy, Samuel, then a girl, Margaret, named for Benedict's first wife. Katherine had suggested it, saying the name deserved to be used with joy instead of only remembered with sadness. Another boy, David. And finally, a girl they named Rose, the baby of the family. The ranch prospered. Benedict's cattle brought good prices at market, and he was able to buy more land, hire more men. Katherine's bakery became the heart of the town, a place where people gathered to buy bread and exchange news. She hired 2 full-time assistants and taught them her recipes, though everyone agreed her bread was still the best. Lily grew into a lovely young woman, smart and capable. She helped run the bakery, showed a head for business that impressed both her parents. When she turned 18, a young rancher named William started courting her, and Benedict found himself on the other side of the equation, trying to decide if any man was good enough for his daughter. "He is a good man," Katherine told him as they watched William's wagon disappear down the road after Sunday supper. "He treats her well. He is not good enough. No one will ever be good enough in your eyes." "Exactly." But when William asked for Lily's hand a year later, Benedict gave his blessing. The wedding was held at the ranch, a big celebration with half the town in attendance. Lily looked beautiful in her white dress, and Benedict cried when he walked her down the makeshift aisle, overwhelmed with pride and love and the bittersweet knowledge that his little girl was grown. Joseph grew tall and strong, taking to ranch work like he was born to it. He was quieter than the others, thoughtful and steady, reminding Benedict of himself at that age. Samuel was the opposite, wild and reckless, always getting into scrapes. Margaret was sweet and gentle, spending hours in the garden with her mother. David had a gift with horses, could calm the most skittish animal. And Rose, the baby, was everyone's favorite, charming and mischievous in equal measure. Benedict and Katherine grew older together, gray creeping into their hair, lines deepening around their eyes. But the love between them only strengthened, tempered by years and trials, and the shared joy of watching their children grow. One evening, when the children were all in bed and they were sitting on the porch as they had done 1,000 times before, Katherine leaned against Benedict's shoulder with a contented sigh. "You ever think about that first day, when you came into the bakery, all the time?" "I think about how close I came to not going in, to just walking past. My whole life would be different. Mine, too. I would probably have lost the bakery to Frank Dalton, would have had to leave town. Where do you think you would have gone? I do not know. Back to Santa Fe, maybe." "Lived with my mother, worked as a seamstress." She shook her head. "It would have been a small, sad life. Instead, you got stuck with me." She smiled and kissed his cheek. "Instead, I got everything I ever wanted. A home, a family, a partner who respects me. I got to keep my bakery and my independence. I got 5 beautiful children and a husband who loves me. I got a second chance at happiness, and I took it. We both did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Somewhere in the house, one of the children laughed. A horse whinnied in the barn. The wind rustled through the cottonwood trees. "I love you," Benedict said. "I know I do not say it enough, but I do. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you too. Every single day, I wake up grateful that you walked into my bakery all those years ago and kept coming back." As more years passed, they watched their children grow and start families of their own. Lily and William had 3 children and took over William's family ranch. Joseph married a schoolteacher and brought her to live on the Rourke ranch, taking over more of the daily operations as Benedict slowed down. Samuel headed west to California, seeking adventure, but wrote long letters home. Margaret married the doctor's son and stayed in Columbus. David started a horse breeding operation that became known throughout New Mexico. And Rose, their baby, became a teacher, educating the next generation of children in the one-room schoolhouse. Benedict and Katherine became grandparents many times over, their house always full of visiting children and grandchildren. Katherine still baked, though not as much, teaching her daughters and daughters-in-law her recipes. Benedict still rode out to check on the cattle, though he let Joseph and the hands do most of the work now. They had been married 25 years when Katherine fell ill. It started as a cough, nothing serious, but it lingered and worsened. The doctor came, prescribed rest and tonics, but Katherine continued to weaken. Benedict nursed her with the same dedication he brought to everything, sitting by her bedside, reading to her, making sure she took her medicine. The children came to visit, bringing grandchildren who climbed carefully onto the bed to hug their grandmother. "You cannot leave me," Benedict told her one night, holding her thin hand. I need you. You are strong, Katherine whispered. You will be fine. I was not fine before you. I was just existing. You made me alive again. And you saved me. Never forget that. You saved me and Lily when we had nowhere else to turn. You gave us everything. Katherine, please. She smiled, the expression taking effort. I am not going anywhere yet. I am too stubborn to die easily. And she was right. Katherine rallied, the cough eased, and by spring she was back in the bakery, albeit moving slower than before. Benedict thanked God for every extra day, knowing how precious they were. They had 5 more years together, 5 years of grandchildren and sunsets and the quiet comfort of a long marriage. Katherine's health was never quite what it had been, but she adapted, learned her limits, accepted help when she needed it. When she finally passed, it was peacefully in her sleep with Benedict beside her. He woke in the gray dawn to find her hand cold in his, her face peaceful. He sat there for a long time, just holding her, saying goodbye to the woman who had been his partner, his love, his life. The funeral was large, the church packed with people whose lives Katherine had touched. Benedict stood at the graveside, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, and watched them lower her into the earth. The pain was immense, but different from when Margaret had died. This time he had loved fully, completely, with no regrets. This time he had decades of memories to sustain him. Afterwards, back at the ranch, his children gathered around him with concern. "Papa, you should not be alone," Lily said. "Come stay with us." "Or with us," Joseph offered. But Benedict shook his head. "I will be all right here. This is my home, our home." And he was all right, though he missed Katherine every moment of every day. He kept himself busy with the ranch, with his grandchildren, with the routines he and Katherine had built together. He still went to the bakery in town, though it was run by someone else now, and bought a loaf of sourdough, remembering. He lived for 5 more years after Katherine's death, years spent watching his family grow and thrive. He saw Lily's children marry, held great-grandchildren, celebrated Joseph's success in expanding the ranch. He told stories about Katherine to anyone who would listen, keeping her memory alive. When his time came, it was sudden. He was out checking on the cattle, something the doctor had told him not to do at his age, when his heart simply stopped. Joseph found him sitting against a fence post, looking out over the land he had worked for 50 years, a peaceful expression on his face. They buried him next to Katherine, and then next to Margaret and the baby who had never had a name, uniting his past and his present in death as he had in life. The headstone read, "Benedict Rourke, beloved husband, father, and grandfather." Below that, "Katherine Nolan Rourke, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother," and below that, "Together forever." Years later, when Lily was an old woman herself, she would tell her great-grandchildren about her mother and stepfather, about how a lonesome rancher had walked into a bakery one day and changed everything. How love could bloom in the most unlikely places, between 2 broken people who had the courage to try again. How a simple loaf of bread could be the beginning of a legacy that would last for generations. The bakery in Columbus was still standing, run by Lily's granddaughter now, still selling the bread made from Katherine's recipes. The ranch was still in the family, worked by Joseph's great-grandson. And the love story of Benedict and Katherine Rourke lived on in family tales, a testament to second chances and the enduring power of love. Because sometimes, when you think your story is over, life gives you a new chapter. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk through a door that smells like fresh bread and let yourself hope again. Sometimes love finds you when you least expect it, in a small town in New Mexico, in a bakery run by a widow who needed saving and a rancher who needed to remember how to live. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, that love lasts not just a lifetime, but echoes through the generations. A reminder that even in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of the Wild West, tenderness and devotion could take root and flourish, creating something beautiful that would endure long after the desert dust had claimed everything else.